Relax, Papa. Oh, I forgot to get some coconut water, buddy. Oh, man. I gotta make a smoothie. Blueberry, banana, and strawberry smoothie. That's it. I really don't want it cold, though, Papa. Sheesh, I really don't. These people, they've lost their mind. What's going on? Hey, look, I'm going to go ahead and start this. Now, this is from Forgotten History. Chinese slaves in America, Forgotten History. Now, a lot of people know that I've been talking about this for a long time. I argued with a couple of people even in high school about, they were like, man, we're no slave, we were the slave. No, well, no, it's not the case. Now, the synopsis the Pelicans are always going to give is going to be an skewed one. But we're going to see what this Marine guy does. Well, I'm not going to play every bit of it because, you know, he's getting paid from it. But a lot of people know that, you know, when I did Paper Sons, you can't see me, I did Paper Sons, and I did a few other very, very long writings on the history. And this is only 2 weeks ago, and I've been doing this for years. When I told everybody there's a book, The Asian Slave Trade, the Portuguese, Japan, blah, 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 most of the people were actually the people who sided with the original people, but you'll never hear that because then that shows how weak these individuals are. But they go about their business telling a story that makes them practical and impractical, which is still, regardless of it being truth, it is so many lies. So I'm going to let this play for a little bit, shut it off, and we're just going to take a breather. And I'm going to eat something and get ready for West Side's, what you call it tonight. I want y'all to see this. I want you to look at the characters. I want you to look at the players. I want you to see it for what it is, okay? Yeah, it's unbelievable. I can sit down with all my books and I can do something that'll blow this out the water, but it's not a competition. Remember, not a competition. Because I know that I'm going to lay it down the way it needs to be laid down. You don't hear nothing about the hot top people or anything. That's what I'm saying about these individuals. Well, let's go ahead and get it started. I appreciate you taking the time. Pay attention. What my boy Jamil Shamsi sent it to me, and I was like, that's cool. I said, let me have a gander. So I took a look, and I was like, you know what? Let me share this with everybody because I don't like to share everybody's material, and I figured that I can insert a few things here and there with this. So this is exactly what it is. Chinese slaves in America, Forgotten History. They wanted to say, oh yeah, they were bringing them in because they're African after the Civil War, blah blah blah. So we needed other slaves. Pure nonsense, pure lies. The hypocrites themselves, their mentality is still enslaved to the lie. Let's go ahead and get it going, okay?
There have always been many different types of slavery, and many people throughout history have been affected. The Chinese immigrants to the United States were no different. All came for a better life, and they expected to work for a wage, and the vast majority did. However, the experiences of the Chinese and other Asians varied greatly depending upon the work they did as well as their gender. Who were the coolies? What types of slavery were there for the Chinese and other Asians? How was enslavement still practiced decades after the Civil War emancipated all slaves? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former soldier, Marine Corps Scout Sniper, history professor, historian, and book author, and we will answer these questions and other issues on this segment of Forgotten History. The Chinese slaves in the United States, much like the Irish, has been largely misinterpreted or deliberately ignored as being a historical fact. According to historian Gordon Chang, official California records indicate that before 1848, there were only 54 Chinese immigrants living in the state. The California Gold Rush of 1848 changed this demographic, creating the first major wave of Chinese immigration, as well as people coming from all over the world into the state. These immigrants called the mountains of California Gamsan, which means in Mandarin, Gold Mountain. Chinese immigrants usually lived in small groups and were known to work the claims that other miners had abandoned. White residents were initially accepting of the Chinese since there were so few of them. However, after 1852, immigration rates greatly increased. Wars, famines, and disease in China increased immigration from China exponentially. In 1851, 2,716 immigrants arrived in California. Within 2 years, that number grew to 20,026 in 1853, making Chinese immigrants 20% of the population in Southern California's mining communities. In response, California instituted a $3 a month tax on the Chinese and coincided with increased violence against Chinese immigrants. In 1854, they were barred from giving testimony in courts, thus removed all penalties for crimes against Chinese, because even if the Chinese were victims, they could not testify in court. Since Chinese immigrants, and especially the labor force, were 90% male, many worked in mines and the railroads, earning the nickname of coolies. But many operated laundry services, provided childcare, sold food, and other professions. Part of this was the fact that female immigrants were nearly all sold as slaves to the brothels, from $300 to $3,000 apiece. This was the primary Chinese experience of slavery in the United States. Naturalist and writer Charles Frederick Holder wrote extensively on this problem in 1897, as it was still a thriving business in Chinese slavery in America. His research was incredible, and he also interviewed many of the participants years after the events. The Chinese women, mostly young girls, would be brought over by Chinese men, some of them family members, and they would be sold in a negotiated deal. The pimps and madams who bought them had them sign what the women believed were legal work contracts, although this was in fact sexual slavery. San Francisco had the largest slave market in the United States, and it was all about the sex trade. One such place was called the Queen's Room on DuPont Street, which was basically a public slave market for Oriental women. Around this time, the Chinese numbered around 20,000, with an estimated 1,500 being sex slaves, and another like number used as enforced domestic servants. Many of these girls did not arrive voluntarily, but were kidnapped in China and brought over to be sold. They were often forced with threats of death to sign customs and immigration declarations that they were legally married or had family in America. Many of these girls were promised to be married to wealthy men once they arrived in America, not knowing their true fates. These women easily passed through customs as mail-order brides, or in some cases, women were told to explain that they were returning to their husbands after visiting family back home. Some women were even brokered and sold on installment plans, like a home mortgage, with interest payments. Some women who fled sexual slavery were hunted down and killed so that they could not tell their stories. Chinese laws and customs made this easier for the kidnapper, because rarely did the bride and groom meet before marriage, or even know each other before the ceremony, as most marriages were arranged. After the Civil War, when all forms of slavery were abolished, including enforced prostitution, these pimps and madams resorted to intimidation and, sometimes, violence and physical bondage to keep the money coming in. Even in areas where prostitution was illegal by any means, the Chinese and other Asian women were renamed domestic or comfort workers, and brothels became opium dens and massage parlors, in name only. Women who learned that slavery was now illegal and understood that they could not be owned often fled to sanctuaries, such as churches and law enforcement. Some ended up in court cases where their masters claimed they had service contracts and produced the documents. These actions by religious groups did not go unanswered, and criminal organizations, such as the Tong, would send teams to recapture these runaway women, often sending hatchet men to attack and kill the Americans who assisted these women. Also, after the Civil War, efforts were made to complete the Transcontinental Railroad, connecting the eastern and western coast of the United States. The railroad companies needed at least 4,000 men, yet they could hardly maintain a workforce above 800 due to the rather low pay and hard and dangerous labor required. At first, the Central Pacific Railroad's directors only wanted a white labor force. Leland Stanford, the railroad's president, had campaigned on keeping Asians out of California and restated his platform in his 1862 inaugural address as governor of California. Problems arose when not enough white men signed up, and as a result, the railroad began hiring Chinese men, but no women, for the backbreaking labor. Before companies hired the Chinese, the labor force was primarily Irish immigrants. Needing manpower, the railroad companies hired 50 Chinese laborers on a trial basis, believing that their race meant that they were incapable of completing the work. The work ethic of the 50 Chinese laborers was so impressive, they were nicknamed Celestials, in reference to the spiritual beliefs of the workers. Railroad companies, recognizing how punctual, disciplined, reliable, and
hit the fucking like button, you malamutes.
Behaved the Chinese workers were, wanted more of them. Stanford changed his opinion as he told President Andrew Johnson that the Chinese were indispensable to building the railroad. They were quiet, peaceful, patient, industrious, and economical. In a stockholder report, Stanford described construction as a Herculean task and said it had been accomplished thanks to the Chinese, who made up 90% of the Central Pacific Railroad's labor force at that time, but they still needed more workers.
That goes for you too, Jamel!
They advertised in Chinese language newspapers. Despite their considered value,
the
Chinese monthly wage averaged between $27 to $30 a month. Irish workers each received about $35 a month. Over time, the Chinese workers were paid 30% to 50% less than their white counterparts, but were given the most dangerous work, and their death rates were far higher than among white workers. In June 1867, 3,000 Chinese railroad workers went on a strike, demanding equal wages, better working conditions, and shorter hours. This was the largest labor strike in American history up to that time. Now, the railroad did not fully agree, but they raised the Chinese workers' pay minimally, but the conditions remained unchanged. Part of this strike was due to the dangers of building the railroad through the high Sierra Mountains, where the Chinese were tasked with cutting through forest and building large retention walls, building trestles, filling in deep gorges, building wooden spanned bridges, and some of it in hostile Native American territory. Then after the severe Nevada mountains, the Chinese endured the heat of the Nevada and Utah deserts, yet exceeded all expectations. In order to prevent workers from escaping, they were sometimes chained together. As they approached the meeting point with the Union Pacific, thousands of workers laid down an incredible 10 miles of track in less than 24 hours, a record that has never been equaled. A Civil War officer who witnessed the drama declared that the Chinese were just like an army marching over the ground and leaving the track behind. However, the progress meant that Chinese died in greater numbers along the Central Pacific route. The company kept no official records of their deaths, but after the line was completed, Chinese civic organizations recovered around 1,200 bodies and sent them home to China for burial. Despite the great contributions made by the Chinese, attitudes changed, mainly through bigotry and the feeling that Chinese workers were taking American jobs for far lower wages. Anti-Chinese riots swept the country, and the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 legally barred Chinese laborers from entering the United States and placed heavy restrictions on those already in residence. After slavery was abolished in the United States, Chinese laborers went to the South as cheap labor to replace freed blacks to work on the plantations. Many of the early Chinese came from sugar plantations in Cuba, and after the Transcontinental Railroad was completed, they also gave up labor. These laborers created their own enclaves in the South.
That's all we're going to do right there. That's monetized on his page, and I just wanted to share that because I know some people have certain issues with a lot of historical truths. I know I told people I've done papers. I'm going to show you the two books I utilized in college around 2000 and I think 2004. I utilized when I did my dissertation. One of them was by Wayne Hong Wong. This is the actual book. All right, I can read this right now. It's PDF. Okay. Now the other one I did. Now this one is out of the University of Illinois Press. All right, or out of Chicago, and it goes back way. Now the other one was a 2001 book. I grabbed it because it was a little fresher and newer. Out of about 12 books that I wanted to stand up and do the conversation. I actually acted on stage this out in my acting class. They asked if you want to do a monologue or a dialogue. I said I'll do a monologue, but I would like to act in the third person. And so what I did, I utilized this one, Paper Son One Man Story, Tung Pok Chin with Winifred C. Chin. Yeah, I got a standing ovation for this one. Not to be bragging, but it was the writing. I did about 24 pages. And you have to give reference to sources and everything else. So it's all that's in there as well as other people's documents. And I even reached out to my Chinese uncle. And he enlightened me that they had been here for a long time. When the invasion was coming, because my Chinese uncle's dark. He ain't like what you see right now. If he was walking down the street with that walk like we got, and you saw him, he's like, his family's been here since a long time. Like, you want to go back to the 12, they made up 12th or 13th century? Yeah, not making war with us either. They were ousted first. They got the heck out. Great seafarers. So that's what I did it on. So when Jamil Samsi sent that to me, I figured maybe he knew about me. I've always talked about it. I did a write-up, a very long one too, on Paper Sons and Coolies. And the women were done bad by their own people, and some of the men as well. And we actually worked side by side. We knew the in and outs of the railroad. Don't ever think that the Paleskins taught us anything about the railroad. No, we knew. And they were paying us, but they were cutting our checks. And there were many fights, many deaths. Well, we killed a lot in the Peckerwoods, man. And we got along well with a lot of our Chinese relatives. You wonder where what happened and where that all went. People are very ignorant to these facts and truths because they've never been aware. The education system makes sure that the division is solid. You get what I'm saying? It's up to us to tell the truth. And most people don't want to do that research. They don't want to have that time to look at things and look at it with not with an educated guess. That's the worst. That's why we're in the situation we're in. Educated guesses from the dumbest sons of mother suckers walking the earth. But people don't want to take the time to actually do the research and then look at their family and really dig and go back. You'd be surprised how many women were caught up in these brothels. All from Louisiana to Carolinas, all over. And they were all Christian men wanting to sleep with our women's and everything. And a lot of women, like the Hatchie parties, they were murdered. A lot of women. Oh, not just Chinese. I hate calling them Chinese. The women of the Xi women, the real women. And regardless of the shade, it's like they were controlled to out and get rid of all the different ones to make one like superior friggin' race. And when you talk about the Portuguese slave trade, people think it means bringing Negroes from Africa and all that. No, they actually enslaved Portuguese people, the original Portuguese. Just like the Filipinos, the Philippines, the Negritas, all that's going to come to light and more. It doesn't matter what they do. You dig what I'm saying? But I just wanted to share a little bit of that. He gets the credit for that. If it's monetized and they split it, it's fine. I didn't show his whole work though, because I'm doing it, I guess you could say I'm reflecting. And I'm going to actually get on my laptop, go on my files, and pull out and take it to the library and make another copy of my little write-ups and everything. And I'll probably read them to you guys. It was pretty. I got an A, so obvious. We got an A in college on it. At that time, I was at 4.0. I think I dropped down 3.8 because I wasn't sleeping, and then all the arguing and fighting with the family that I was married into was just beyond comprehensive. Not to bring any drama and hate, but this lets you know that there's a lot of so-called natives. I know it's hard to believe, but from the 18 to the 1900s, before that, none of these people were here. Now, the Shi people always visited, but at that time, there was a lot of fighting going on around the world. Undocumented, unknown history. But it's all there on the walls and old people's stories. I appreciate y'all taking the time for me to share this. Something else, a little tea, I guess you could say. I don't have no problem with my Chinese relatives. I have a problem with the governments and the persecution and this deviation, this sickly thing that's going on. You see what I'm saying? Oh, we can stop it. But anyway, thank you for watching. I'm gonna shout some of you guys out, and I'm gonna get off of here. I know Herbo was up in here. Jamil Samsi, beautiful brother. Yeah. It's in this description. That's the brother that wrote. Yes, they did. Don't call my dummy no dummy. Validated. Don't call my dummy no dummy. It's an excellent book. I've got it, and it's an excellent book. If you want to order it, I would advise y'all. I've advised y'all to look at all the things in the description and get his book. All right, awesome friggin' book. You know, Rhonda, what's going on, beloved? Yeah, y'all got to hit the mics when you come in. Okay, I appreciate it, brother. Alpha Harden, what's happening? I was like, Jamil, got me wanting to get a sip of the old dark juice back there. I'll be forgetting sometime. I ain't going to lie. But anyway, I appreciate you guys taking the time. Just a little something else. It's not to hammer down or come down on anybody. It's just they don't teach this in these school systems. You know, and then they want to push critical race theory and all this other goofy stuff. And the other term that they utilize, which is a downright no good lie with these orphans, not talking about the Chinese, I'm talking about the Peckerwoods, that whenever they lie, I feel like they're Peckerwood, they're woods to me. And I ain't talking about in a good way. Many of them buried in the mud. That's all I got to say to that. Y'all might sound ugly. Many Peckerwoods are buried in the muds, in the sticks. Many, not at their own hands either. And that's another history they don't want to put out there. Because then they had these bugs really walking around in fear, but they'd be a little more quiet, a little more humble. Now, the reality is, they always want to acclimate everything to African American to make them feel like they belong or they something when they always belong. A lot of these pale skins are children of Totaria. They just don't know it. But this is not their ancestral land. All these fake engines and all that, just dumb. They're the ones that need to reclaim their true identity and their greatness and knew that we all worked hand in hand, side by side. That's the truth, and that's a fact. Okay? I appreciate you guys taking the time. It's always the same. Nothing but love and respect. And I know some people, it's just hard to hit the like. I mean, you know, it is what it is. And I wasn't going to do no long one. So let's get off of here. West side, hopefully I'll be wide awake. I'm down here. It's about 69 degrees in here. I'm thinking about turning the heat on a little bit. And I'll have everything set up, waiting to go, brother, when you go on. Just call or send, SMS. And hopefully I hear it. All right, brother? When you come in here. All right. Mad love and respect, everybody. I appreciate you guys taking the time. I've got books on Paper Sons and all that, and I've got that one book that went around for a long time. It's hard to find it now. You know, the Spanish Chinese slave market. Yeah, Spanish Chinese slave market. Most people don't know it's a real thing, and many of the women were raped. Many babies came out of it, and you wouldn't know if you don't know the truth. All right. So I appreciate it. Hey, hombre French. I appreciate everybody taking the time to share this. And thank you. Y'all have a grand evening.